Well, we're about to start another project. This one is this large ceramic object, which is a pedestal planter. And the top part would have a flower pot in it. And this is an Art Nouveau piece. It looks like a Tiffany, but it may not be. I don't know. Anyway, it was previously repaired, not well, and it's been broken again. And so, it with some difficulty, I took apart the previous repair. Quite difficult. And so we're ready to reassemble this thing. And that's what we're going to do today. So I've got, I'm going to be putting together sections bit by bit, and like for instance here, I'll be putting a couple of pieces together, and then I'll set that aside, grab a couple more pieces and glue them together, and which is a standard operating procedure. But I need to get some of these pieces in, like in here now, because once I glue this together, I won't be able to get them in there. There's a couple of pieces here missing, but I only have one, so I'm going to put it in here now. And then I'll tape this up. And we check the edges because I don't want any glue squeezing out where another piece has to mate with it. So we'll set this aside to cure and move on to another section. This is a low-fired pottery. It's not fine porcelain. It's not as low-fired as something like a terracotta, but it's also not a very hard ceramic as you would find in a high-fired piece. But it has this opalescent glaze on it, which is going to be a challenge when I get to the painting stage. So I'm going to wipe and roll so I don't smear it. And now I got to get a chip in here before I tape this closed. Alright, so we'll set these aside, let them let the glue cure for, I just cut myself. Let the glue cure for an hour. And we'll come back and put some of these smaller pieces together. By now I have 3 large pieces that I'm getting ready to attach to the main pedestal. But here's where it gets interesting. So, in order to put this piece in here, I need to fill this piece right here. And you can see the big part of this is missing on the inside. So I found this piece, and it goes in here. And now, but there's still a little piece missing, and I found that here. So, in order to get that in there, I need to pull all this apart, and I'll glue this to this, and we'll get these 3 pieces in. But if I don't figure this out now, it would be impossible to get these pieces in there after I glue all these pieces together. So we just take our time and find the right pieces to the puzzle. Well, now I have to put these two pieces together, and this was part of a previous repair here. You can see on this line. And it's as good alignment as one could expect for this thing. And we've got a little bit of chipping along here. And so this piece was broken off, and then this piece was broken off of that. The combination of putting these two back together, like I said, the alignment's pretty good here. You would think when I put this together that this handle would line up. If I line up this crack here, I have good alignment, but then this handle's way off. We've got a step here. So it's out of alignment this way and this way. So it's better to just line up this long, good crack down below, because I have other pieces that have to mate up to either side of that. And if this is off, these won't match. It's a lot easier to deal with this separately than to deal with all the 3 or 4 pieces that come together here. So, and the other thing is I need to put the Elmer's glue down here where it's a nice tight joint, and here where there's actual space in here. You can see light through here. So it doesn't completely close. So in this joint I'm going to use epoxy. So, and that will go something like this. First I'll put my Elmer's on here. Spread it around, get it into the crevices. And then I have my epoxy. It's just a clear 2-part epoxy I have mixed up ahead of time. It's starting to set up already. And I'll put that in here. And here we go. Press it down, stretch it tight, get a nice tight seam there. I'm running my fingernail across this joint, and if it doesn't catch, I've got good alignment. Clean off the other side. As you can see, this crack isn't closed, but there's epoxy in there that fills it, and that's what's important. I'll fill the outer part of this crack with something harder as the fill. Do the A+B putty will go in there. So I have to get these pieces in here in a certain order or it won't go together. And the first piece I have to get in is a bit problematic, and it won't. I'm having a hard time getting it to seat into position, and the reason is this handle has an armature in it. There's a metal rod that goes in here, and that's has to fit into a socket over here, and with all these wobbly surface going in several directions, it's going to take some finessing to get this to settle into position. See, one side goes down, the other side doesn't. So I think I have a plan. And often the adhesive lubricates this process a little bit. So the idea is I don't want to grind these two surfaces together in a practice run, because I'm going to end up with grit in the crack, and then the crack won't completely close. So that's why I didn't spend more time trying to squeeze it in. So I think I have a plan. The first thing I do is get my glue on here. What I'll try to do is feed the armature into its socket first, and then rotate everything around that into position, and we'll see how that works. So first thing I'll do is get my armature in place over here and round it up into there. It just went into the socket, and now this side is seating into position, but it has to go in. But this side, there's a major step right here. So first thing I'm going to do is, I have a mallet, and one side has a leather on the head so that I don't chip it. I know it looks crazy, I'm hitting this with a hammer, but this actually works. As you can see, the glue is squeezing out, the crack is closing up, and the step is closing up over here. Okay. And so I need this, there's a big step right here, and I'm going to tap that into place. A bit of a spring to this thing. If I can get it to seat into position, and we'll lock it down there. The step's gone. Nice and smooth now. I would still like to see if I can get it a little bit tighter. I don't recommend that you try what I just did unless you have a lot of experience in getting away with it in the past. Looks like I need to do a little more persuading with the mallet. Trouble with this side popping up, so I'm going to tape it down first. that doesn't move, and then I can focus on this end. Can you see that crack? Yeah. Before I put the tape on, I need to get this little shard in here. Need a different mallet. There we go. So I got this chip in. I don't have this piece. Okay. So I've put Elmer's on part of this. So it's going to go from here to about here. And then the rest of it I'm going to do in epoxy because this fits tightly and this doesn't. You can see light through it. So I want to get plenty of adhesive on that. I need to work quickly here. I went together rather nicely. Mallet. Basically work my way around and make sure it's seated into position. placing tape as I go. And now we get to this side where it's open more. Get some more tape over here. All right, so I have some epoxy squeezing out here, and it's already starting to get hard, so it's easier to cut it off. It's easier to cut than it is to wipe. But that also means I need to close this crack up. And that just means I need to tap it a little bit. Put some tape on it. And help me pull it together. And now I got a piece to put in here. That requires a couple of smaller pieces first. And that's that. Put a little tape on it. I'm going to start filling the cracks and voids, chips, and that stuff on this right now. And I'm going to start with a deeper pockets, and I'm going to do that with A+B putty. And fill these quickly. They'll get topped off with milliput. But mainly just to fill the deep chips. And on this handle, I'm calling it a handle because it looks like a handle. You're not really supposed to pick it up by this thing. Where I have some larger chips. Little wet finger will smooth that out. And these are deep cracks here, so I'm forcing this down in there. Turn it around to the other handle. This is the one that's offset. Force that deep into this crack. So I'm gonna start filling this, some of these lines, these cracks on these dimensional areas in a different way than I did the flat areas. And the reason is because it's quicker if I do what I'm about to do. I'm going to fill this and then wipe it off. Wipe off the excess that you'll see here. And the reason I didn't do that with all this other stuff is because I have this gets covered fairly quickly, and there's a lot of it, and it's flat. So that's easy to file down later. But if I were to wipe it off, I'd get about, maybe this far, and my epoxy is starting to get stiffened up, and then it's got the further I go, the harder that's going to be to get it to stick down, and it's my ability to work with it with water diminishes over time. So it's quicker and easier if I do all these flat areas the way you see me do it here, and I can file that off. It's nice and easy, and I can get it nice and easy, flat and even. Here, it's a little more difficult to file in here because the file's flat and this isn't. So I might have to do more applications of it, but I get a better result quicker if I can fill these lines and then wipe off most of the excess outside the line, especially if I've got a good even, if it's not offset. So that's what I'm going to do here today, and you'll see what I'm talking about as I begin this. So I'll get my milliput and spread it on there, and I'm working it into the crack because that's the important thing to do here. I don't want to just cover the crack. I want to push the stuff down inside it. And so I've got some Q-tips, which I dip in plain old water, and a couple of paper towel pieces. And this the putties are very responsive to water, most of them. You can shape it, you can wipe it, and this saves me so much time, especially with the difficulty described of working around these rough areas. Fairly easy to dissolve if I get to it before it starts to set up. It's important to dry it as I go because I don't want to have the dissolved milliput in the water dry on there. And you won't see it until it dries, and there'll be a haze of white haze from the milliput. And it's a fairly wet Q-tip. It's soaking wet.
like so. And now I've got a nice, pretty smooth fill there, and I can see where I'll have to go over it again, but that's okay, because this is such a quick process. So I will do that in all these areas where there's a lot of dimensional stuff. There's quite a bit of it on here, but I just wanted to show you what technique I use to deal with that. Alright, so now it's time to file down the fills. This is the first round of fills. I'll almost always do a second, sometimes a third. These are steel files, but they're not going to hurt this glaze as long as I'm not too harsh with it. Well, I've got a lot of this filing to do, and I'm not going to make you watch it all of it. I'll come back and show you what this looks like once I've got them all filed down. I've got the inside and the outside of this to do, so it's going to take a while. No point in making you watch. I have to watch it. Well, now it's time to put some paint, a base coat on the inside. Tricky working inside here, but we'll manage. And here's a look at what I just painted. So we got the background color underneath this green. So we're doing a cold glaze on this today. This is my third coat. This is just going to be on the inside. And just hit a couple spots on the outside. Alright, I've colored the inside, put the green paint on the inside this morning. forgot to film it, but now you're seeing the results of it. So we just need to get a bunch of cold glaze on the inside and protect this layer, and then we're working on the outside. So I'm getting ready to apply some paint, airbrush some paint onto this object, and I need to do a little bit of masking. But I have cold glaze on here, and I don't want to peel it off when I take my masking off. So I'm taking my masking tape and detacking it by using the lint on my apron here. And now this is about as sticky as a Post-it note. And then I can put this on here, and it's just sticky enough to hold it in place. And then when I pull it off, it won't pull up my cold glaze. Because if it does, it's going to take the paint underneath the cold glaze with it. So I'm just going to use my finger as a mask here. So this is actually my second coat of this color. And I don't need it up here. So I need to do this color now. It's a kind of a dirty yellow-green color. Sort of it looks almost olive once it's buried in the over. So there's a base color under there, and then over that we get some antiquing. So that's the plan here. I'm going to get my base coat down of that yellowish green. This is all going to be covered up. Most of this here on the back side of this is going to be completely covered up. But it does affect the color anyway, so I'm going to I call it underpainting.
Gonna make you watch me paint all of this. I have this same section 3 times around here, so I'm just gonna do more of this around the other side. And I'm not gonna bore you with all that tedium. Anyway, we'll get cold glaze on this, and then the next step, I'm not sure if I'll deal with this right away or come back to it after I do some other color. But anyway, like I said, it's an underpainting process, and this is the first stage of it. So a lot of the places where you can see through the paint, it's not going to show. It's going to be dark over that anyway. So. Okay, I'm going to do some overpainting on some of this yellowish greeny stuff, and I'm using this color. It's a transparent version of raw umber. It's a Golden's acrylics, which is the brand I use. And this is straight out of the bottle. Pretty much undiluted, no mixing. And I'll probably take 1 or 2 applications of this to get the tone right, but it's just about perfect. Okay, so now I'll just do that all the way around. I just wanted to film one section of it. So now I'm doing the same color, only a more denser version of it. It's the straight color with no lightener in it, and it's made transparent. So I have to build up these dark layers. And I'll probably go around this a couple times until I get the density I need on each petal. Alright, I'm on my second time around now. I got a smaller brush, getting more detailed strokes, darker, thicker. I'm going to put the, there's an interference color on here. There's actually a couple of different colors that combine. And this is what I'm using. This is golden acrylics, interference green, and it's like an iridescent color. And can you see this down here? This is the effect I have to get. It's sort of like, you know, like an insect carapace. It's like a purple and red and green mixture of interference colors or iridescent colors. So we've got it up here on this handle, and I'm doing the green right here. One's on this side, then I'll switch and shoot the other way when I get the others. So I'm using the violet version of this interference color now, and I'm putting it on the blue. It's going to go on a lot of the blue stuff. It'll also go in here on this, next to this green. It's a subtle effect. I have several coats of cold glaze on the pedestal, and I need to sand that down, and what we call mesh instead of sand. We use this product called micro mesh, and it's this stuff. It's a fine grit in a latex or rubberized sort of. They don't use glue, they use latex, so that way the grits are not locked in place. They roll when you sand, and it gets a smoother finish on it. And I go through 4 different grits starting at 2400. Start with 2400, sometimes 1800, and then 36, 4000, 3600, 4600, and then after that I use a polish, this, and that on a cosmetic pad will buff it up to a glass-like finish. So I have my 2400 grit here, and that means I have to go over this entire thing 4 times once with each of these grits. And you can't see what I'm doing on the finish here, but you can sort of hear that it's rough. And it's just very, very tedious to just go through here inch by inch. This is the part of the job that's just not much fun. It's a whole lot of this. And we just take our time and work systematically so we don't miss anything. And I just sand all this down. And I get it to where each grit, I can see that with a reflection of light on where I'm working, I can see that it's matte finish instead of shiny once I sand it. And then after that, each grit gets a little shinier. It's completely flat on a 2400 grit. And after that, it gets a little smoother on each one and a little shinier. And in the end, where the cosmetic pads won't reach, I'll be using a Q-tip with that polish on it. And I have to be careful though, because of all this texture, that I don't sand through the high points. I just gently and slowly and systematically do this. And for you viewers, it's akin to watching paint dry. But I just wanted to show this step. I never show this on my videos, just because, well, you can't really see what I'm doing other than pushing a piece of sandpaper back and forth. But I'll show you once it's finished just how shiny and nice it looks. Well, that's it. It's finally polished it up, did the final polishing, buffing all the way around. We went through 4 successively lighter grades of grit on mesh to polish this up, and finished with a polishing compound and a cosmetic wipe, and polished it up so it looks like a glass glaze. So this was a long repair, but it came out very well.